Hi, this is Nick with 10 Bell Pod, and here's 10 facts on the Dynamite Kid. First, I want to share one of the craziest things I've ever stumbled across while researching a wrestler, which is saying a lot. Dynamite Kid was born Thomas Billington on December 5th, 1958 in Goulburn, England, and obviously born into the Billington family. The Billington family is an English family with a long history of being state-employed executioners. Executioners such as James Billington, a hangman for the British government from 1884 to 1901. It was said that he had a lifelong fascination with hanging, and as an 11-year-old boy, he built a model gallows in his backyard and practiced with dummies. Once he passed away, his son William would take over for him, and he was assisted by his younger brother John. The Billingtons would carry out 235 executions in England between 1884 and 1905. To add to that, his grandpa, also Thomas Billington, was an English bare-knuckle boxer who apparently challenged his neighbors to fights and smoked 90 cigarettes a day. So that's the makeup of old Dynamite's DNA. Dynamite had an epic feud with Bret Hart in Stampede Wrestling before either were household names. The two very young wrestlers pumped life into Stampede Wrestling when they faced off several times for the British Commonwealth Junior Heavyweight title. They had a string of hard-hitting, show-stealing matches that paved the way for both to become stars. Dynamite Kid and Tiger Mask had a series of matches in the early 80s that are seemingly going to live forever. If you're a wrestling fan and somehow haven't seen these, you owe it to yourself to do so. These are matches decades ahead of their time, and something that you could put on any WWE, any AEW pay-per-view, and they'd still steal the show today. Which leads to the next point. Dynamite influenced and/or paved the way for generations of wrestlers, leading up to the high-flying, fast-paced product we have today. From Davey Richards, Eddie, Bryan Danielson,
He who shall not be named.
Dynamite changed what pro wrestling looked like in the mainstream and allowed smaller guys to have a shot in a world of 300-pounders doing headlocks. And while Dynamite was revolutionizing the industry, he was in his early 20s. Davey and Dynamite jumped from New Japan to All Japan in the 80s. After being offered an actual suitcase of money from Giant Baba, the Bulldogs jumped from New Japan to All Japan. If you're familiar with Japanese wrestling around this time, you know that is a big no-no. While people like Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, and Jimmy Snuka previously did it, you were quite literally putting your life on the line to do so. But while in All Japan, the British Bulldogs became one of, if not, the greatest tag team in the world. The British Bulldogs won the WWF Tag Team titles for the first time at WrestleMania 2, accompanied by Ozzy Osbourne. So, that's fun. Dynamite Kid was on the TV show The ATeam, Season 4, Episode 7, an episode called Body Slam. Hulk Hogan's in it, of course Mr. T, and it's just pure dumb 80s fun. Dynamite had to drop the tag team titles, barely being able to walk. At a December 13th, 86 house show, on a routine rope running spot, Dynamite suffered a brutal back injury, rupturing 2 discs in his back. I mean, it wasn't as much as this one spot as it was that he wrestled like a maniac for years. This is just when it caught up to him. Keep in mind, at the time, the British Bulldogs were tag team champions. So about a week after his 6-hour back surgery, Vince calls him up and tells him he needs to drop the belts. Dynamite explains that he literally cannot walk, but Vince wouldn't take no for an answer. I mean, how can I fire you for being injured if you still have my belts, pal? So on January 27, 1987, 6 weeks after what should have been a career-ending injury, Dynamite was booked on a WWF Superstars taping. Since Dynamite, couldn't walk, Davey had to basically carry him to the ring. There, Jimmy Hart hits Dynamite with his megaphone so Kid could sell out the rest of the match. Then the Hart Foundation would win the tag team titles, which actually gave Bret and the Anvil a huge career push. The Dynamite Kid still isn't in the WWE Hall of Fame. We can debate over how much the WWE Hall of Fame actually means, whether it's a milestone in an amazing career or just a place that lives in Vince's head so he can sell extra tickets WrestleMania weekend. But one thing is for sure, There is a hole in it without a guy who influenced the next generation of wrestlers, who influenced the next, who influenced the next. WWE tends to shy away from some of the more problematic people when it comes to the Hall of Fame, and Dynamite was definitely problematic, especially post-career. Starting in his early 30s, Dynamite had one of the most brutal, steep, downward spirals, physically, personally, and professionally in wrestling history. And that would lead to his last match ever, October 10th, 1996, at a Michinoku Pro event. He teamed with Dos Caras and Kunaki Kobashi versus Great Sasuke, Mil Mascaras, and the original Tiger Mask. This was after a dramatic decline in health and even a couple near-death experiences. The last images of arguably the greatest in-ring performer of all time would be a broken, withered-away Dynamite Kid, a cautionary tale to anyone who pushes the limits of drugs, steroids, and performance too hard. For more pro wrestling history, find Tim Bell Pod on your favorite podcast app, or find us on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok.